much for coming by. And like my dad said, I was in South Africa for 2 years with the Young Adult Service Corps, which is a mission branch of the Episcopal Church. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about mission to start with. How many of you have been on a mission trip before? A couple of you have. And I just want to get an idea of what is mission? What do we mean when we say mission? Or why do we do mission? Anybody can throw anything out there. To help people, right. Anything else? I know that's sort of a loaded term that we talk about, mission in the church. And a lot of times people think of it as going out and evangelizing or conversion or things like that. And there's been a change over the years, and especially for the Episcopal Church, to look at it sort of in a different light. Let's see if this works. Good. Okay, so the Episcopal Church, this is right from the Episcopal Church website. There's 5 marks of mission. And I like how it says the mission of the church is the mission of Christ. And you see the first one is to proclaim the good news of the kingdom, to teach, baptize, and nurture new believers, to respond to human need by loving service, and to seek to transform unjust structures of society, to challenge violence of every kind, and to pursue peace and reconciliation, and lastly, to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and to sustain and renew the life of the earth. And those last 3 in particular, I think, are where the church right now is focused on mission. We're going out to serve others, and bringing our gifts to go and help people who might be in need. And as a result, those first 2 happen. By going out and serving, by going out and doing work with people who are in need, we are in a sense proclaiming the good news of the kingdom. Because first and foremost, that's what Jesus did. He was a man who, by no misunderstanding, he was absolutely devoted towards helping the poor, those on the margins. And that's where he hung out, and that's exactly what he did. And so we, as a people of God and as people of Christ, are called to do the same thing. And by doing so, we sort of evangelize in a new way. We evangelize by our actions and what it is that we do. So that's the 5 marks of mission for the Episcopal Church. You can go on the church website and find that out. And what I was doing, what I said, was the Young Adult Service Corps, which is a mission branch of the Episcopal Church, and it's for people in their 20s. So people 21 to 30 get sent all over the world as part of the Episcopal Church to go out and do mission work, what it was we were just talking about. And that can look like a number of different things. And what I thought I'd do right now is there's 2 video clips that I'd like to show that have just been released by the Episcopal Church that really talk a lot about what the Young Adult Service Corps is. So bear with me while I try to get these set up. And this is Grahamstown, where I was.
Is it right on the coast?
Close. Can everybody hear okay?
Yep.
So it's really hard to pack up and get each other here. And friends and all their family, their lives go on in America. It's a completely different life here. You have to wonder what it's going to be like when you get back.
Too loud?
I came from living in San Francisco with a bunch of my buddies in a big city and having fun, and then you come to a monastery where there's nothing around. You're here and you're living in certain parts of the day in silence.
What I was expecting was something very similar to the Peace Corps, and while on many facets that is correct, the fact that it's a religious-based organization really changes the ins and outs of the program. Not only are you an expatriate presence in a country, but you're also a spiritual presence there.
It's the concept that you go to be with people. And that was really all my expectation was, to come here to Hong Kong and be with the migrant community, just to be.
Anywhere else you go in the world, things are just so much more different than now in the States. People consider time differently. What a social norm is different. You're going to have to grow and change into the way they live. So you have to be able to kind of bend and twist to fit into their society.
I tell everyone that will listen that YASC is the best program for this kind of work because we have so much support from the Episcopal Church Center. People check in with us constantly. It's easy to form relationships with so many people.
I felt very supported and still feel very supported during this process and before I came out together. That made everything a little bit better. You know, I didn't feel like I really needed to get a whole lot done because I knew people had my back.
They realize that we're young and might not necessarily be experienced in traveling the world, and they do whatever it takes to help us have the most incredible experience.
It's a life-changing, transformative experience, especially for those of us who are kind of wondering about what they want to do, kind of trying to find themselves. When you come to a place where you're different from everyone else, it makes you step back and take a look at yourself. And you really see what's important to you, what you value. You learn so much, and it gives you so much more than what you wind up giving in.
It's been absolutely wonderful. It's given me that chance to, learn a lot about myself. Being out here, doing the work that I'm doing, being involved with the YASC program, and living at a monastery has really helped me sort of come to terms with what it is to try to get in touch with God.
Okay, so that's the first video I wanted to show. There's one more, but you can sort of see that the young adults are put all in different areas of the world, and like I said, a big part is going out and doing service and mission work with the Episcopal Church. But as I think you see from that video in particular, another big part of that is that the young adult is actually learning a lot about themselves and about their faith and getting a lot out of the experience as well. So it's not just going and giving your gifts and your time, but it's also a lot about learning about yourself and getting the gifts from the people you're working with and recognizing that. The second video is a little bit more about what we're actually doing. And there's, you'll see there's clips from where I was working in Grahamstown, South Africa. And there's my colleague, Cameron Swore, who was also working there. There's clips of him, and that's exactly where I was working as well. So let's go back to the second video.
I head up to school at about 7:30 a.m. School starts at 8 a.m. because we'll come and we'll line up, have a quick prayer, and after that we're off to the classroom. We do anything from basic maths and reading and all that kind of good stuff in the morning usually. And then we have a quick snack, and right after that is recess. We're out having fun and playing on the schoolyard and doing what kids do well, getting rid of all that energy and just having a good time. One of my main roles in the classroom is to help teach English, and there's what's called the first additional language. We launch into a first additional language lesson, and we'll teach English for about 45 minutes to an hour, and we finish off the day with a story, a video, anything we can try to get creative with, promote that learning environment for the kids, but in a very fun way too.
I work for Hope Africa, which is the Anglican Social Development Office for the entire province of Southern Africa, which includes South Africa, Lesotho, Swaziland, Angola, Namibia, and Mozambique. I've dabbled in finance and fundraising, visited some projects, which is really cool. Yeah, whatever's needed. I'll even wash the dishes. Well, I've worked in nonprofits before in the States. It's really different here. The pace is different. The work itself is really different because, different services are needed here. Across the board, the people who are doing the work here are the ones who care most and the ones who give all of themselves when needed.
There's a lyric in a country song, you either grew up on a farm or wished you did. I grew up in hay fields and tobacco barns, threshing wheat and combining corn. I don't really like busy work in offices. It drives me insane. I can't do it. I'm a poor typer. We get up probably around 4:45 and drink a cup of coffee. Right around 5 we go to the poultry. We have just under 800 head of laying in. chickens. We clean and water and feed and harvest if there's any eggs there in the morning. From the poultry house, we go up to the goat house. If it needs sweeping, we sweep it out and then replenish the food there. And at 10 o'clock, you go back to the poultry. This time, they're eating the eggs. Each individual egg gets weighed on this little manual scale. So you know, if you want to weigh a couple thousand eggs, it takes a couple hours. After 2 o'clock, you're starting to get a little tired because by that point in time, you've been up for like 10 hours. So we usually maybe weed a little, possibly do some paperwork, and then we also water the greenhouse again in the afternoon and feed the baby chicks again.
That's where I was too.
I work here with the Order of the Holy Cross, which is a monastic community, and they have a monastery here they've had for about 14 years now. 5 years ago or so, they started an after-school clinic for the students of the local area. 2 years ago, they started a school for the younger age students of the area. I'm an assistant teacher for the school, and then after school ends, I'm the main teacher at the after-school clinic, and during that time, I live at the monastery grounds here with the brothers. I get to the school just before 8 o'clock, and from 8 to 1, my day could involve being the main teacher of an assignment or of a lesson, or sending an email or some computer activity after 1 o'clock, get a quick lunch, and then go back for the after-school clinic. That could last until 4 o'clock. There could be nobody there, so we're done at 2:30. It depends on what the need is for that day.
I get to the office sometime in the morning, and sure, anything can happen. It could be quiet, or there could be 10 clients when I walk in the door. I have focused more on research than on client intake, but if it is super busy, then I end up with clients. Everybody eats lunch together, and then it's a lot of office work, talking to various people, about their cases. Life in Hong Kong is life anywhere else. It's just life.
Okay, thanks for bearing with me. I just thought that was a nice introduction to what the program is that I was a part of. And what I like about that is you get to see the many different opportunities that young adults have to be all over the world doing really all sorts of different work that's all considered mission work. There's just a lot of neat opportunities available. For my particular experience, I was in Grahamstown, South Africa, and I know some of you have been to South Africa before. Grahamstown is right here. It's in what's called the Eastern Cape, and I'm sure some of you know Cape Town, which is in the Western Cape. I know some of you have been there as well. South Africa is a fairly big country for an African country, and you can also see that it's broken up into different areas. There's the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape, the Northern Cape, Johannesburg, which you've probably heard of too, it's way up there, and Durban is, can't find it, right here. So it's spread out, and there's a lot of different languages. There's 11 official languages in South Africa. Where I was staying in the Eastern Cape, Xhosa was the predominantly spoken language. It starts with an X, it's the clicking language. So all the kids that I worked with grew up speaking Xhosa. That was the first language they learned. And then English is also a predominant language in South Africa. And so beginning in grade 2 or 3, the children start to learn English. And that was my primary role, was to start teaching them English. The Eastern Cape, also what I think is interesting and where I was here in Grahamstown, was also a big area, a hotbed of resistance during apartheid. So Nelson Mandela was born in Mthatha here in the Eastern Cape. Steve Biko, who you might have heard of before too, he is from the Eastern Cape. And so during that whole apartheid resistance movement, the Eastern Cape was very, very much involved with that and a huge part of that resistance. And because of it, there was a lot of violence in the Eastern Cape during apartheid and whatnot. But this is just to give you an idea of where I was located right around here. You also see Lesotho. It's the only landlocked country in the world, I think, and it's completely surrounded by South Africa and Swaziland up there. Just to give you a little bit of geography of where I was. And what I thought to do now is just go through some pictures of what I was doing, and I'll kind of explain what was happening out there, the work I was getting into. And while I'm doing that, please feel free to ask questions, or if anything comes up, just grab my attention and we can talk more about that, or we can answer the question. So here's the Holy Cross School. These are the kids that I was working with that you saw in the video. Sorry, the picture is a little blurry, but the Holy Cross School serves children who come from local farming communities who live outside of the city of Grahamstown. They live in these rural farming communities, so they don't necessarily have transportation to and from school in Grahamstown. And some of you may know that there are townships in the towns of South Africa, or what the local people call locations, and those are left over from apartheid. It was where the black South Africans were segregated and kept by the minority white South Africans, and those have sort of just continued on, even though apartheid ended in 1994. It's still very much, it's not around technically, or so to speak, but it's lingering, and most of the black South Africans continue to live in what they call the townships, which are usually shanty towns or areas of extreme poverty, while the white South Africans, who are only about 8% of the population in South Africa, live in areas that would look like home to us. They look normal, nice houses, whereas about 80% of the black South African population live in these townships or shanty towns. In any case, these kids live away from all of this. They live in these very rural settings. And what the brothers, so I was living at a monastery with a group of monks, the Order of the Holy Cross, and I'll talk more about them in a little bit. They started a monastery in Grahamstown, and what they started to do was cater towards the educational needs of these kids who were living way out in these rural communities and weren't getting any sort of education because they didn't have transportation into town. So what they'd do is they'd start going out, and they had a big bus that they drive around, pick up the kids, and then bring them to school and just give them this fabulous education at the Holy Cross School. So that's where I was at the school, teaching and working with all the adults up there in the back and teaching these kids. It's a small school. There's only goes from about kindergarten to grade 3, and then the kids move on. And the thought process about why do it a young age group for education, it was because they wanted to get these kids off on the right foot, as opposed to getting them later on in life where they might have not had the good foundation level education. The whole purpose was here, start them off on the right foot, give them a good education from the get-go with hopes that that will continue on later.
Stephen,
Yeah.
you said they move on, where do they go to, public schools?
They do go to public schools, and also there's some that go into private schools. And what's so nice about this is the brothers don't just abandon them after grade 3. They support them financially. They give them scholarships to go to these other schools. And actually sometimes the kids end up going to, there are some really nice private schools in Grahamstown that are so expensive. But the brothers, if the kids are able to get into those schools, will pay for their funding and their education. But most often they go to public schools. The schools in the townships aren't all that great, and to say the least, the education there is just sort of a mess. And so they try to get them into other schools outside of the township. There are some public schools in the town of Grahamstown itself where some of these kids will go. And again, the brothers support them financially through all of this.
Steve, I'm sure they're there, I'm just not seeing them. I don't see a lot of girls in
There are. The girls keep their hair short here, so it's actually half and half, more or less. These are all boys right here. These are girl. You can't tell because usually their hair is pretty short, but it is half and half. And actually, at this age, girls develop so much faster than boys, so the smartest kids in the school were the girls who were the best academic, would do the best academically.
But also you mentioned that sometimes they have the same names, right? So it's really
Yeah,
hard.
right.
They always have the same names, right?
Yeah, sometimes
The boys and girls have the same name.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, so for example, there was a boy named Siam Tanda in the school, and there was also a girl named Siam Tanda in the school. So it can get a little confusing sometimes. So yeah, go through some of the pictures and explain a little bit.
Did you learn their language?
A little bit, enough to sort of manage a classroom to say, sit down, be quiet, get out. But mostly I was teaching English and it was intensive English, so we do real simple instruction. You know, we play like Simon Says, or we write up just basic words, we go through the alphabet, and I would be talking to them in English the entire time with the thought process that they, you know, you just kind of get thrown into it, and every single day these kids are picking up. And what's so great about teaching young kids is anything is a learning opportunity, and they are just picking up on anything that you're giving them. And so it's just it makes teaching a lot of fun because you can just play games and do other really fun stuff and incorporate, you know, I work with a curriculum that I've incorporated into all of it and just go from there. Anyways, this is the Holy Cross School itself. It's a brand new building. And it's just really state of the art. All the classrooms have TVs in them. The brothers had done a lot of fundraising to put this school together, a lot of fundraising here in the United States. It's a completely non-government run school, and that's intentional. They don't want anything, they don't want the South African government to have anything to do with it, unfortunately, because they are worried that it's just going to mess things up, and the South African government right now, unfortunately, doesn't have a great track record of doing good stuff with education. And you can see it is pretty remote out there. There's really nothing around. There's one road that comes in, and right here you can see, and that's where the Combees is what they call them, the big bus that goes around and picks up the kids and go off and get all the kids and then bring them back to school and then take them back afterwards.
Is that all open range for animals?
To an extent. I mean, there are game reserves nearby, which are usually fenced-in areas where most of, you know, the South African animals.
So you don't have animals wandering into the compound?
Not so much. Some baboons would be wandering around every once in a while. But like the big five animals like lions and elephants and stuff aren't trumpeting around here. You get monkeys and things like that. But nothing too aggressive or scary. Yeah.
Any type of deer or anything like that?
Yeah, they have some, actually right across, you can see right across from the school, they're actually sort of fenced in, but there was springbok and there was even some kudu that were around there, but those are sort of fenced in. They're actually right across is a farming area for some of these, those types of animals.
The brothers live here?
Yeah, the brothers, well, they live at the monastery. I have a couple slides, and we can talk about that. Yeah.
How do they recruit the kids? How do they find the kids to come to school?
So, it's a great question. The community is, I'm trying to think how to say it. Well, there is an application process, but it's pretty well known amongst these farming communities. You know, they are small communities, who the kids are who are coming up, what age they are, if they're going to need an education. So it's pretty well known by the brothers ahead of time what kids are coming through the different farming communities, but they do have to go through an application process. And priority is given to the kids who are very remote and who are really in need of an education. These are three of the students. On the left, that's Siam Tanda. In the middle, that's Master Ole. You can see the X in the middle of his name there. So there's a click right there with the X. And then on the far right, there's a little boy named Likame, and there's a Q in his name. And so that's the click for the Q, Likame. It's a different click than the X, which is, and the Q is that. So
You learned that click.
I learned the click. I had to learn the click. So these are three boys. Some of my, well, they're all great students, but I miss them a whole bunch, and here they are now. These are actually, all three of these boys have just recently graduated. Actually, this year. They moved on, and so are no longer part of the Holy Cross School, and hopefully in some of the schools in Grahamstown. Here's just a regular classroom setting. You can see it's pretty small, but it is a nice facility compared to where the students are usually coming from. Unfortunately, in South Africa, in the communities that these kids are coming from, levels of abuse are very high, alcohol abuse is very high, rates of HIV/AIDS are very high, and their just living conditions aren't that great. So I've never seen a group of students be more excited to come to school than to have these kids. It's really a special part of the day where they know that the teachers there are going to be devoted to them, to love them, to give them their attention. And these kids just love being in this environment. And it's just really a sort of a neat thing they have going on here.
There's no more than 12 in each classroom.
There's no more than 12 in each classroom. So the kids are really given a lot of attention. And there's one main teacher in each classroom, a closest speaker. And then each classroom also has someone like me who is like an assistant teacher who would teach English and do sort of other things. So the kids get a fair amount of attention. And there's two kids working. That's Kolawane on the right and Amafe on the left, doing their work there. And there is part of the grade 2 school. You can see again that have TVs, everything's sort of in there. I love Amafe here because she's trying to smile, but she's not quite getting it. She's got to go like this.
She's working on it.
Yeah. And you can see here, they have what's Inja, which is a dog, and they have it written out in Xhosa and in English as they're starting to learn all this stuff. Yeah.
I'm assuming that they don't have homework. Is there anyone to help them at home?
They do have homework, and you're right. Sometimes they don't. A lot of the kids don't, and the teachers know the students well enough and know the community well enough, and will know when probably a student might not have that help at home, and we'll sort of game plan around that, how to help that student get their homework done, and whatnot. And you can tell when a student who does have that help, it's very apparent when they are getting their homework done, everything's looking good, and the student who's not. So the teachers take that into account.
Do you do any visiting in the communities?
Yeah, we go out to the communities. Like I said, the combi will go around and pick up all the students, but the teachers and I will also go out to the homes of the students. We'll do home visits, we'll get to know their parents, and things like that.
Do the kids ask for help, the ones that you said don't have, when they're doing their homework and they don't have anybody to help them, do they ask for help?
Not so much. I think at that age, they're young and they just kind of want to carry on.
Yeah.
But they do get it when it's obvious that they are needing help and things like that.
And you have a social worker on.
Thanks for saying. There is a social worker, a South African social worker, who is at the school full time, and she actually does the majority of those visits and is the one who's responsible for getting to know the background of the kids, where the kids are coming from, and their family history. And it is really heartbreaking just to see what these kids go through. There's also, unfortunately, and this is a huge problem in South Africa, is rape right now, and children being raped, women being raped. It's just, it's awful. It's really, really bad news, and it's very much a part of South Africa that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think needs to be addressed more. And it is also happening to students we have at our school, and so that's why we have a social worker, and that's why we try to do
About the shirts.
Yeah.
They're all wearing red shirts. Are those given by staff
Yeah.
to kind of equalize the students?
Yeah, they're given to the students to sort of make sure everybody's on the same playing field, because some of these kids come from extreme poverty. We wear the same exact shirt every day if they didn't have something else. So each student's given a couple of shirts that they can wear. That's another good point. Food. Sometimes students can't afford to bring, they are responsible for bringing their own food, a little snack. Sometimes that can't happen, so staff will work with that student to sort of provide, some sort of nourishment. And you can't bring really fancy snacks. That's another rule. If you're bringing, you can't bring like sweets or chips or things like that. They have to be pretty healthy snacks that are sort of all in the same field. That woman in the middle is Tombakaya. She's the main teacher that I taught with. She is a wonderful, wonderful woman, one of the best teachers I've ever been around, and she's also no nonsense. She doesn't put up with anything in the classroom, and she is very small, but she's also not a force to be reckoned with. She has that teacher stare that I've never seen before. And it's interesting because the cultures, South African culture, in particular Xhosa culture, is so different from our white culture. And that took me a while to get used to. Children are much more used to adults being very stern with them, and will respond to that. Like me being a white American male who was used to teaching in a classroom and having fun, then the children didn't really. I mean, they do respond to that but if they want to have any sort of, if you want to get a kid to listen to you, you have to be straightforward and you have to show them you're not messing around because that's part of the culture that they're coming from. And so I learned a lot from her about having to do that, to give a good eye stare, let a kid know with your eyes that you're serious, there's no more messing around. And then the young man on the right, Bongasani, he's, gosh, he got to be 20 years old now. He was 18 when this picture was taken. He is one of the students who's come up through, well, when he was a little kid, the brothers didn't have school yet, but they still had a presence in South Africa. He came up through, they had after-school programs when he was younger, and so he came up as part of the Holy Cross Monastery sort of education system, and comes from the local farming communities out there, and now he is spending his time also assistant teaching in the classroom and spending time there. He's a neat young guy, and yeah, I got along with him really well. This is the play yard. You can see, again, it's very open. Their swings are made out of old tires, just kind of cut and hollowed out so they can sit in and swing. And again, here's the classrooms in the morning when they come and they line up and they're getting ready for school. You can see they have their backpacks on, and yeah. This is an interesting picture. This was, I just wanted to include, this was during the dedication to the school. Actually, the Archbishop of South Africa came when the school was first built and blessed it and did everything. And this is part of the celebration. And what I love so much about this is some of the students' parents who've been up since 4 in the morning cooking. There must have been around 300 people who showed up. And it was a rainy day. We had a huge tent. And it was just muddy and miserable, and yet they somehow got a fire going. You can see these are some of the pots that they are cooking in. They cooked all traditional Xhosa food, and they're up there just doing it. So there is dedication from the parents, some of the parents, and really recognize that this is a great opportunity and want to be a part of it as well. That's Temba. He was the combi driver. He's one of my favorite guys there. He's probably about my age, and he's up there. And this is Nomamasi, or Makulu, which a lot of them call, she's a grandmother, sort of a matriarch figure in that community and in the farming communities. And she worked at the school well and really sort of took me under her wing and sort of acted like a motherly figure to me while I was there in South Africa. But what I thought was funny is she was responsible for getting all this started and got up at 4 in the morning, and the night before there was a group of seminarians from Grahamstown, because there's a seminary there, who had come to the monastery to stay and were sleeping there, sort of as the monastery also does a guest ministry where people can come and stay. And these are a mischievous bunch. And we have name tags on our doors that tell you, where you're staying and who's in that particular door. And the seminarians had come and switched my name with another name of someone there. And Nomamasi needed to get a hold of me at 4 in the morning, but I was sound asleep. But she went to the wrong door and started banging on the door because the seminarians had switched our names in the middle of the night. So that happened this morning. So somebody got awakened really rudely because Nomamasi had to get up early and do all this work. And was trying to get hold of me, but she couldn't do it. But in any case, there they are, cooking and being a part of it. So like I was saying, I was also through this. These are the brothers, the Maria Umama Temple Monastery, the brothers I was living with and staying with, and who also were responsible for doing this ministry. 3 of them are South African. 3 of them are from the United States. It's actually an American monastic order. They're based out of West Park, New York, but they have houses in, well, they had a house in Toronto, they have one in Santa Barbara, they have one in New York, and they also have one in Grahamstown. So it is an American order, but they do have a few South African monks.
They don't have one in England. They need one in England. They're crying out to get something organised in the church.
Well, you should let them know.
I should.
Yeah. But if you have a chance to go see them in West Park, they're really a bunch of lovely guys and do some really, really great work. That's the chapel where we're staying. You know, I don't have pictures of the actual quarters where they stay, but the brothers stay in a monastery. Not many people are allowed in that monastery into their corners. That's sort of the brothers' area that they stay. And they also have a guest ministry, which I was talking about, where people can come and stay and worship with the brothers. The brothers have 5 services throughout the day. There's vigils, there's an 8 a.m. Eucharist, noonday prayer, there's vespers, and then there's compline. So 5 times a day, they're in this little chapel praying. It's very contemplative. After compline, they enter into silence for the remainder of the night, and they don't break that silence until after Eucharist the next day. So it's a very quiet and contemplative atmosphere. It was actually really nice to be in, especially while I was discerning, going to seminary and things like that. It was a great place to be, just to think. It really makes you tackle a lot of your own issues too when you're there and you're by yourself, and you don't have much else to do besides think about who you are, what you're doing. But it's also just a wonderful way to get in touch with God.
Steve, do they serve out in the community besides working in the church?
They do just through the school. That's their sort of community outreach. They also go into Grahamstown and will be out there, but the majority of their job, their vocation is to pray, basically, and to do the work that they do through the school that they run. And here's 3 of the boys. I just wanted to include this picture because you can see kind of how vast this is, and it is quite remote. I mean, this is some of the farming land in the area, and behind these boys that you can see, here's 3 of the students. But it is out there. I mean, it's not way out there. Grahamstown is, I think, 7 or 8 kilometers, somewhere around there. But it's far enough where these kids, it's hard for them to get into town often. This is a view just from part of the monastery. It's really pretty, and it is just a fun place to be. There's Brother Josias. He's one of the South African brothers. He comes from Johannesburg. He speaks Sesotho, but he also speaks English, and he speaks a bit of Xhosa as well. And then the 2 boys are Bongisani, who we talked about earlier, and Tamalani, older boys who were still sort of came up through the Holy Cross Monastery and are now still lingering around and still in touch with their brothers.
Steve, did you leave your razor there?
I leave my razor. I grew my beard out there too. So. There's Noma Masi Makulu, who I was talking about, and some of her traditional garb. I miss her a lot too. She was a wonderful presence. And that's actually her house in one of the local farms. And I go over there often just to have tea and to hang out with her. She was a huge fan. She was this matriarch figure in sort of all of these communities. But she's also a huge fan of WWF wrestling. For some reason, is huge in South Africa, and people love watching it. So I go over on Sundays after church and drink tea and watch wrestling with her. And she also took care of, she has I think 4 children of her own, and she must have close to like 8 to 10 grandchildren, and a whole bunch of other kids, and she takes care of all of them. She is the woman who is responsible for all of them, and who's just sort of taken on that role, and also has taken on kids who aren't hers or aren't her grandchildren at all. So a strong woman and a strong force to be reckoned with in that community, and just a lovely, lovely, caring. Oh, here's another little video. This is just a worship service from a Eucharist. Just to give you a taste of what that was like at the chapel. No music, all drum. All the drums is the only instrument they have. I think it'd be fun if we did that here at church. Things a little more lively.
I think we had to be black.
What is the
They
song?
want that movie.
What's that?
What is the song?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and listen and figure it out. I have
Native?
yeah. All of the, well, not all of, the majority of the songs I sing are close to songs, usually hymns, close to hymns, things like that. And during the Lord's Prayer, you say it in whatever language you want to say it in because there's 11 languages, so it's kind of fun. Sitting around holding hands and saying the Lord's Prayer, and you have 11 different languages being spoken at the same time. So it's kind of the last part of this, I just want to talk briefly about the St. Augustine's feeding program, which actually this church supported and raised money for and gave to. It was just sort of an offshoot project I started with St. Augustine's Church, which is in the township in Grahamstown. It's an Anglican church that really does a whole lot of good things. And my favorite is the St. Augustine's feeding program, where they actually identify children in the township who are very much in need, who might not have parents, might not have any sort of money or access to food, and they every day of the week they feed them lunch, and it's probably the only hot meal that these kids will get throughout the day. Maybe only the one meal that these kids get the entire day. And so what I ended up doing was going there on Mondays, and we would show up. And Brother Josias and Bongasani and I would just spend time helping kids with homework and playing, and we had a whole bunch of donations given for just puzzles and games and stuff like that, sort of like an after-school program for these kids to get involved with. And again, it really comes back to this idea of just sort of giving time, showing these kids that there's someone who's going to show up consistently every single week to be with them, to love them, to play games with them, to do whatever. And that consistency really means a lot, and unfortunately what these kids don't get much of. Also, they do get fed every single day from St. Augustine's, and that's what we raise money for here at the church, which I just thought was great. So I wanted to include a few pictures. These are some of the kids.
Can you give us an idea of what it costs to feed?
Oh gosh, it wasn't much. It's staggering how much, I think $500 could go way more than we'd ever dream of. Could really last them a whole long time. Let me get back to you because I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's really, you hear the number and it's just mind-blowing how long what we would see as a small amount of money can feed that community before.
This is in Grahamstown.
This is in Grahamstown. This is the front of the church. It's by no means a fancy church. In fact, we'd probably see it and go, oh gosh, it looks like a little run down. But it's in the middle of the township and it's just doing really, really wonderful work. And I was just so impressed when I got there and saw what they were doing. They really are giving back to their community and serving their community in just a lot of wonderful ways. Here's some of the kids. There's Bongasani. There they are. They just kind of get their food and then find a place to eat. And there they are. There's Bongasani playing some games with the kids afterwards, after they're done eating. And there's Brother Josias. This is the inside of St. Augustine's, either helping them with homework or doing some sort of lesson that he's doing with them.
How long does the service go?
The Anglicans, Black South African services in the townships will last about 3 to 4 hours. Anglican service, so I don't know how they do it, because it's exactly what you guys are just doing in there. But the music is so much more part of the worship service. Sermons are like 20, 30 minutes. It's a process. It's an all-day experience. People bring food. People are up and moving around. People get out. And then like a white Anglican service would last about an hour. Yeah, there it is.
I was just thinking it'd be something to try.
You got to preach for 20 to 30 minutes. There's Brother Lucius in another lesson. And these are the women that do all the cooking. This is what really impressed me. These women show up every single day. Some of them are retired, some of them are teachers, and they just cook all these meals for these kids who really need it. And they're members of the church, and yet they're so dedicated to this program. It's just unbelievable. I love being around this woman right here, Tabile. She was the head cook and the woman who was in charge of running it, and was just such a lovely lady to be around. It's just the monastery grounds, looking on, and there's some of the kids at the school, Holy Cross School. And that's all really I had prepared. I don't know if there's any more questions.
How did they prepare you for this? I mean, this must have been quite a culture shock for you.
I had to do a 2-week training in Toronto through the Episcopal Church that was geared toward mission work. So they had all the missionaries who were going to be serving for the Episcopal Church overseas come together for 2 weeks, and they did an intensive training with us every single day, sort of preparing us, getting us ready, what it's going to be like to go into different cultures and do work, which is tough because we're all going to different areas and into different cultures, but it's sort of broad, and really sort of get us ready for that. We help us begin to sort of identify, our support systems, make us feel supported, but at the same time get us ready for that cultural immersion that's going to be like. And they also, before that, they have a discernment weekend where all the people who are thinking about doing something like this go off and they meet with the people who run the Young Adult Service Corps, and we talk about all sorts of various things where they sort of get an idea this is going to be a good fit, and you also discern too if you think this is something you'd be willing to do.
And that's where they kind of place you. So
They get an idea where they want to place you there. Right, and they place people in particular areas based off of what the people have done in the past, their job experience. Sometimes kids are young adults are coming right out of college and they go right into this, and they take that into account. Some, like me, do it later on. I've been working for 4 or 5 years before I went into this.
Don't they also give you guys a psychological evaluation?
Yeah, you meet with a psychologist. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I like it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Do you keep in touch with any of the people back there?
I do. I send letters sometimes to like Noma Masi, who we saw in Bonus and those guys. I just sent a video to the kids because, like I said, they just graduated their first class, and so I sent a little video to the kids just telling them I was proud of them. They did a really good job and all that sort of stuff because I've known them since they're kindergartners, and I'm good to see them sort of graduate. So that was really neat. Actually, all 4 of those kids just graduated. And the brothers, some of them, one of the brothers I was really close with now is back. He was an American. He lives back here in West Park now, and so I've been up a few times to see him since we're both on the East Coast. And the monastery there is lovely. I get to go spend time with him. And some of the other South African brothers, since the monastery is based out of West Park, New York, will rotate through just to spend a few weeks at the West Park Monastery before they head back to South Africa. And so when they come through, I'll make sure to go up and visit them just because I lived with them for 2 years. And it's really, sort of a monastic community, and you really get to know people.
You mentioned there's a lot of sexual assaults here. How's the law enforcement? Is it pretty corrupt, or?
It's awful. It's awful. I mean, that's why we have a social worker there, and it's just a nightmare. We have to try to work with the police on several different accounts, and it was just non-responsive. And so that's why it was so important to get a social worker there who could just stay on top of them until something happened. But I mean, you report something like this, and then it's months and months after that it actually they even begin to have some sort of movement in the law enforcement. It's just a mess. It really is. It's heartbreaking, and the amount of this happens and what's going on.
Are there other religious missions in this area, like Catholics, Jewish?
Yeah, Presbyterian was a big one. In fact, the Presbyterians had a huge influence earlier on. I'm not so much sure right now, but it's interesting. One of the practices of the Xhosa culture for a young boy who is to become a man is called going out to the bush, where when they turn 18, they go out and live very away from society for about 3 months. And when they come back, they put on all these new clothes and paint their face and do all sorts of things. But some of the things they wear are an Irish cap that wasn't originally part of their culture, and an Irish jacket because of these Presbyterian, it's actually Scottish Presbyterian Scottish missionaries who had been in the area and who they learned this from the fancy way to dress up. So that's what they do. So there has been other, so Presbyterians were there. There are a Catholic, there's a Catholic order in Grahamstown, and they're doing some work too, an order of sisters actually, and they're doing some mission work in the township itself. Jewish, not that I know of.
Do a picture of the townships.
I don't. I might have my computer, but I don't here. But they're sprawling. I mean, just to give you an idea, there is a nice, usually in a typical South African town, there's a nice part of town where, again, there's about 8 to 10% people living in areas that look very much like this. And then 90% just right next to it. I mean, it's blatant. Right next to it is just a huge sprawling township where about 90% of the other population is. And again, it's just shantytown, poverty. South Africa is a very interesting country. Still, one where I've lived for 2 years, I'm still trying to wrap
You know, when we were in Johannesburg, we put a lot of security fences and stuff, and bars on windows and everything, and then shanty towns and stuff. Do you see the same thing in Grahamstown?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no question. Very much. High fences, like electric fences, where they can have wires across the top, broken glass on the top of the thing so that you can't hop over fences. It's very visible. It is, I think, I don't know quite how to go about explaining the country. In fact, I did a really bad job. I mean, there's a lot there that happened from the result of apartheid, result of colonization, where the Dutch and the English basically tried to, wrangle 10 different African tribes into one country who were at war with each other, and then they have Dutch influence, they have English influence, and then you put on top of that the HIV/AIDS rate in South Africa, which is higher than any other country in the world right now, and it's just, there's a lot going on there. That's hard to sort of explain. It's still reeling from the effects of apartheid.
It's really good that the ones you have, it's great to see that they're going to go on and it will spread.
And then again, that's why there's a mission for this dedicated education, because it all starts with education. If the kids can get a good education, hopefully they can see what's going on, or I don't know, come up with ways to work through these problems. But if there's no education, which there really isn't in South Africa right now, or at least for the black South Africans and kids who don't have money, then I don't know where you go. Yeah, so I think that's all we have prepared. Thank you for the question.